So yeah, welcome to the session today. And we're going to be looking through a really interesting topic, which I think is really going to be of great benefit to you. And that's how to spend up to 66% less time on HR vendor selection without sacrificing the proper due diligence that you're going to need to go through. And as I said, my name's Ben Gagan, host of the A Better HR Business podcast. And I'm really looking forward to just coordinating the events here today. And what we're going to be doing is walking through a couple of presentations and then going through some questions. So as you can see there, if you have any questions throughout the presentations or at any point your mind is racing, throw your questions into the chat box there, and either we'll answer them as we go, or more likely we'll do a Q&A section at the end there and we'll go through the questions. And as always, if there's too many questions or we run out of time, whatever, still put the questions in, because we'll then just email you out an answer and get you the details, okay? So yeah, please share those. As I said, I'm really looking forward to this session, because we're going to be working through Enavrio's HR technology selection process. So that's how to ensure that you ask the right questions around implementation, and then how to get that set up for success. And as I said, how to spend a whole lot less time on the vendor evaluations. And so Olive will be guiding us through the process that you can use for that. And of course, there's going to be some case studies, some real world examples for you to wrap your mind around. So we're going to be looking at how to use technology to streamline your evaluation process. And as mentioned, the Q&A session. So as to our speakers, I will start by introducing the two. So we've got Brenda coming second, and she's a widely recognized HR technology, workforce data privacy, and future of work expert. But to begin, I'm going to call upon Casey. Casey Bolden is head of customer success at Olive Technologies, knows a ton about this area, and a lovely person as well. So Casey, can I pass it over to you?
Sure. Thanks, Ben. Hi, everybody. My name is Casey Bolden. I joined Olive earlier this year as the head of customer success. I spent the last 18 years in marketing and communications and client management across a variety of industries. And in my spare time, I like to obviously run, read, and spend time with my family. For those of you that don't know, Olive is an end-to-end digital transformation platform. It's used by organizations and consultants to find solutions that drive digital transformation. Olive was built from the ground up to really promote collaboration, both internally and externally, and allows you to take an agile approach to streamlining your technology and vendor evaluations. It gives everyone involved one central platform to engage and collaborate. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but for now, I'd like to hand it over to Brenda Laughlin.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Brenda Laughlin. I'm the managing partner and co-founder of Enavrio. We'll talk about Enavrio in a minute. So a little bit about me first. I spent the first half of my career as an HR practitioner, an HR generalist, and a CHRO. I spent the last 15 years of my career in HR technology and consulting. As an HR practitioner, I've selected and implemented many HR systems, improving HR operations, employee engagement, and organizational results. In my efforts as an HR practitioner, I learned a lot of tips that I was able to share with my clients when I transitioned from corporate HR to HR consulting. So I've used what I have learned to help my clients select and implement HR technology in their organizations. And I love this topic because so many of the HR solutions or programs that exist today that we bring to the table in our organizations can really have an incredible impact and ROI. Next slide. So let's talk about Enavrio. So for those of you that haven't heard about Enavrio, we're really a new breed of consulting and staffing organization focused entirely on HR transformation and technology. We are really an HR technology services marketplace and freelancer collective. And we focus on bringing HR experts and solutions to your organizations like yours. We have over 150 experts in our collective today, working with organizations of all sizes and industries. Our clients come to us with specific HR transformation or technology challenges, or they need capacity, or maybe they need a flexible on-demand resourcing. Our collective of independent consultants lead HR transformation projects, helping organizations with strategy, business case development, vendor selection efforts, system implementations, optimizations, integrations, maintenance, support, and workforce data privacy. So whether you are starting your HR transformation journey and need support in selecting the right HR technology, which we're going to talk about today, or you're looking for help in optimizing and maintaining your existing systems, we can help. So that's a little bit about Enavrio. And now back to you, Ben.
Excellent. Thank you then, Brenda. And I don't know if it's a bit weird that I'm actually getting very excited to think about all this sort of stuff. So we've got obviously quite a few HR nerds in the room, it seems. So this should be an excellent session. Now, I mentioned that we're going to have some practical examples, some case studies, but it's probably better to get some context in the process to flow through first. So let's have a look at the HR technology selection process, and then we'll work backwards into that. So Brenda.
Thank you, Ben. So let's talk a little bit about accelerating your HR tech vendor selection, ensuring that you really have no regrets with your decision. Have you heard the saying? Maybe you have. The best system is the one that you are going to, and the worst system is the one that you are buying. Oops, I got that wrong. The best system is the one that you are going to, and the worst system is the one that you are leaving. So we want to help you make a decision that you feel confident about years later, and that when you transition off of the system, that you still really love it, that you're transitioning off the system because times have changed, not because you regretted your decision. So I have this picture of a house up here. How many of you have ever bought a house or maybe a car? And you know that's a huge decision. Dreaming about your new home or your car. You have visions of this perfect home. Maybe it solves a problem. You need more room for your growing family. You need a smaller house because you're now empty nesters. You want the primary bedroom on the main floor. Or maybe you need it up next to the kiddos. You need a fenced yard for your dog, or perhaps you want no yard at all. So many options to consider, and finding the right house that you love that meets your needs takes so much time. So my husband and I, we recently went through this process. We looked at house after house. We wanted a view. We wanted little yard maintenance. When I walked into the house that we bought, instantly I knew it was the one. And I love the house we chose. However, after moving into it, I realized it has no pantry, no linen closet, the flooring is a little off. And house hunting has many parallels to the HR tech vendor selection process. You can instantly fall in love with all the new bells, the new whistles, but not doing proper due diligence can have you in that same spot thinking, okay, so where do I store my food? Where's the pantry? So one of the challenges I have seen in sifting through the vast number of solutions that exist today in the HR tech space is it's just overwhelming. Last week, I was at HR Tech Conference in Vegas. There were over 400 exhibitors. And that means 400 HR tech vendors, 400 people with booths, 400 companies with booths. But there were so many more vendors in attendance even without the booth. And there were so many vendors that didn't attend the conference. Looking across the exhibit hall, I was completely overwhelmed. I would get lost trying to find a vendor. How is an HR tech leader, how can they sift through and find a solution? It can seem nearly impossible. And according to Gartner, 77% of B2B buyers said their last purchase was very complex or difficult. So let's go to the next slide. I want to talk about our Enavrio's E6 no regrets model. We've created this to help you really supercharge your vendor selection process. So these are the components. It's not a process necessarily, but these are the 6 components that will help you ensure you have a quicker and better outcome. Envision, elicit, engage, enlighten, enable, and execute. So we're going to talk about each of these and dive a little deeper into each of the components. Like I said, they aren't meant to be done in a specific order. These are the components we believe you should consider in a selection process. And we don't have a ton of time today, so I'm not going to go into all the pieces of each of these components, but I want to just kind of highlight some of the pieces of the component of each of these components that will help accelerate your process and ensure you make the right decision. So let's start with envisioning. Envisioning the result and the business outcomes. It's so easy to get caught up in the flavor of the day, all the shiny new solutions. Like as I looked over the HR tech floor, there were so many interesting solutions. As you start your HR tech selection journey, the critical piece is getting clear on what the desired outcomes are. You will speed up your selection process by clearly understanding what organizational or business problems your program or technology will actually solve. And if you know that from the beginning, your process will be smoother. When I started house hunting, I didn't know exactly what I wanted. I knew my house was too big for us as empty nesters. I knew I didn't want to clean 5 bathrooms anymore. So I looked at all sorts of houses. If I had a better idea of what I was looking for in the beginning, I would have saved time for me and for my realtor. So what company strategy will the new program software help the company meet? What problems are you really trying to solve? Let's say you want recruiting technology. It's critical to understand if your business is having problems recruiting talent. Is it that the candidates aren't even finding your company to apply? Or the challenge is more that the selection process is complicated and difficult for your managers? Or is it the candidate experience? Or is it all of the above? So getting clear on what you are hoping to achieve from the start will make the process flow much smoother and quicker. Okay, so next we go to elicit. Eliciting system requirements and stakeholder expectations, and then managing those expectations will help ensure your system's success. Unlike many other business systems, HR systems are used broadly in organizations, and everyone seems to have an opinion. Ensuring you have a thorough understanding of those stakeholder expectations and that the expectations are managed and realistic is really critical to ensuring you don't hit some kind of unexpected roadblocks. So are there key groups that should be involved in the requirements and decisions? Your CFO, your CIO, your operations leader. Is this a sales mentoring program? Then your sales leader. Laying the groundwork with your CFO, your CIO, your COO in advance of your selection process, that'll really help get buy-in and support and help reveal the specific functionality that they're looking for in a system. Like for instance, you might think on-demand pay is the way to go for your workforce. It's all the buzz right now. But knowing the impact on finance and understanding if you have their support can save you time. You don't want to go down the path pursuing this only to realize it's not going to work for your finance department. So when we work with clients on vendor selection, we pull from our vast experience, templates of requirements, and we use amazing tools like Olive to help elicit requirements and expectations from stakeholders, and really accelerating the process and minimizing the chance of those surprises later. Thirdly, let's talk about engaging stakeholders and vendors in a productive and effective way. Engaging the right vendors is key to a successful selection. If you don't know a vendor exists, you could miss the perfect solution for your business. Let's say you're wanting a new performance management type of platform, and I know some really good ones. Do you know all the vendors that play in this space that could work for your type of organization? Having someone who knows the vendors in your industry can help you ensure you don't miss anyone, or that you actually include and spend time with a vendor that is completely wrong for your needs, the size of your business or your industry. And that can help your process flow much smoother and quicker. As we built Enavrio, I've experienced this myself. We've gotten in time crunches, and then we went with a vendor for some part of our business, not HR things, but not realizing that there were better solutions out there. Later, we found out that we had to change vendors wasting time and money in the long run. So engaging the right vendors and stakeholders in each part of the process and engaging them in the right way is key. So another example, narrowing your vendor list to a short list and having detailed demonstrations of the platform is done best with the entire team present. You can stop at the features that are of interest to particular individuals and individual functions, and think of this as like a product deep dive to confirm the solution is actually truly a contender. And having the right people in your organization involved in the demonstration makes it easier to talk about the unknowns and the unknowns and the benefits the technology can offer. Next, let's talk about enlighten. So using tools, using automation, independent reviews, and expert will really help enlighten your efforts. As I was on my house buying journey, I'm so thankful for my realtors. We had this HGTV realtor couple that helped us figure out, okay, what are the updates we need to make to our 20-year-old house to get it to sell quickly? And the market here in Colorado is crazy and has been declining recently, like in the past couple months. So having that help really helped us sell our house. And then as we searched for houses, they took us to areas that I would not have known existed. And they pointed out considerations that I would not have considered. So likewise, an automation tool like Olive, along with HR tech experts, consultants, can help guide your selection process. So having accelerators like system requirement templates, they can help you think through functionality that you didn't even think about, things that you would just have missed otherwise. And then having a functional consultant deep dive independently with your organization on maybe what they've seen come up for other clients that can really help ease your mind that you're not missing something during the process. And hopefully that stops the last minute requirements, because we've all had that happen. You're in that if you've been through a vendor selection or you're buying something, at the last minute, you're like, oh no, I forgot I needed this as well. So that's last minute requirements can really derail an effort. So hopefully you can catch those things up front. An expert can help you connect you with resources too, like industry analysts, independent researchers. They can help interpret the information. Is this truly an independent review, or was this something a vendor paid for? They can help connect with customers that maybe the vendor didn't introduce you to, so they can really help you understand what the system can do, what it can do, and what it really takes to implement it. Next, we have enable. Enabling the results, ensuring you are set up for success from a resource and a project perspective. Think through the implementation rollout ahead of time, understanding all that's required during the implementation process and post go live. We've worked with clients, and so many clients say in the middle of the implementation process, I didn't know this was going to be this hard. So planning for your internal staff, your vendors, third-party consulting requirements, implementation schedules, integration, maintenance, support requirements. Don't forget into the rollout, the project timeline, the project plans. Are there any potential roadblocks that you can anticipate? It's important to be aware of that at the beginning. What resources are needed to be involved in the program? Does it require additional FTE? Do you need external support? Before you decide on an HR system, consider the tool it's going to have on your current employees and HR team. I've seen projects derail because current employees have too much on their plate and the team kind of revolts and the project doesn't get done or doesn't get done right. So depending on the scope of the change, should you hire someone to oversee the whole project? The person could own the project, oversee your resources, ensure deliverables and decisions are met. The team would remain engaged in the projects. It's not like you're losing control of the project, but it may benefit you to have a dedicated resource doing the heavy lifting throughout the selection process and into the whole project itself. So you really have one chance after you purchase to really get the selection right and then to implement it. So don't risk this by overcommitting or overextending your staff. And next, it's time to execute. Your vendor selection will not be successful if the execution is not successful. We could have a whole nother session on execution, but the key during the selection process is planning for execution. Ensure your project is set up for success. Just like my move, we had a delay in selling our house we didn't expect, had some updates being done, timing was just off. So we were sitting on lawn chairs in our living room for the past month. You don't want your project, you want your project to go smoothly, and you don't want people sitting on lawn chairs. So setting up the right project governance, having a steering committee to help keep the project on track, having change management considerations covered as part of the project. All of this considered initially can keep your project on track and really accelerate your entire project. So if you've done the work up front during the selection process to plan properly, understand the implementation, the maintenance, the support requirements, project will flow so much smoother and have a better chance of success. So as you prepare for your next vendor selection, I hope you remember no regrets, E to the 6th to help supercharge your vendor selection. So now back to you, Ben.
Thank you very much. Now, had a couple of questions come in, but what I'll do is I'll hang on to them for just a minute. So thank you to those sending them through. Thank you. But Brenda, fascinating stuff. And for me, certainly, as a former HR person, it's more than just downloading the product guide sheet and just working through a checklist of items. Does this software have the thing? It's a much bigger picture, and the engagement and the eliciting the requirements and stakeholder involvement so critical to success, beyond just selecting the thing, but getting implemented and used and people enjoying the process. So yeah, let's move now to Olive. So Casey, I'm going to ask to talk us through a process on how to spend 66% less time on HR vendor selection evaluations by using technology. So Casey.
Yes, thank you. And Brenda, I hope that you at least had some comfortable yard chairs that you've been sitting on for the last month. Okay, so the Olive process. Really, the process is quite easy. We're not saying you have to completely, revamp it and change it and do something, dramatically different. We're really just saying take the RFP process and you're using technology to make it more efficient and agile. So, in month 1 that we have listed here, you've got really project discovery and scope. This is where you're building understanding along with that project scope of what's going to be involved, that future state, that desired future state, and what are the benefits that those end users are going to get out of it once it's implemented. So you're doing this along with your stakeholders, whether it's department managers or C-suite decision makers, and also the end users. And as Brenda just went through, I would envision that this is part of the envision and elicit components in the no regrets model. Secondly, you've got requirements gathering. And this is going to include, gathering those company specific requirements. So what are the ones that your company requires or is going to need for the project? That could be, the actual use case of the HR technology that you are currently searching for, along with those company ones like IT security. Does finance have any, requirements that are going to go into any, solution that gets implemented at your company? You can do this if you've been capturing, requirements internally on a spreadsheet and quickly uploading them into the platform. You can also use Olive's requirements library that includes a treasure trove of criteria by project type or by keyword. And then everything is done within the platform. All of your stakeholders are able to rank and comment and collaborate with each other and with you on what's important, what are those must-haves, and really have those discussions, within the tool, which is reducing the amount of meetings, the back and forth, maybe with the project manager who is, running the whole show. Then we go on to vendor engagement. This is going to be inviting those solutions that you do want to evaluate and inviting them into your project in their own view within the Olive platform. So, Brenda mentioned being at the HR conference last week, and there were like 400 exhibitors there. When you are searching for the HR technology that is going to solve that specific problem, you might have the most well-known ones that are going to pop up, on the Google first page, or you're going to have some lesser known ones, but that are really going to hit all of the requirements that you guys have. So we really suggest, not just looking maybe at what you think are the top 3 or 4 solutions, but digging a little bit deeper. Because allowing them all to come into the platform and work in their own view is going to start to highlight where some companies excel and where others are lacking. Shortlisting and demos obviously is going to come next. Once you've got all of your requirements ranking and you've got all of your vendors who have answered that portion of your project, the analytics within the tool really start to highlight, here are the top solutions that you should be looking at based on your needs, not what the vendors want to show you or what their best in class solution provides, but really what's important to you. And then finally, adoption and ROI. Engaging stakeholders from the beginning is, usually allows for better product adoption, increased ROI, and faster time to value. I went through this myself in a previous, product implementation where I, as an end user, had no say whatsoever in, what we were looking at, what our pain points were. And when the product was then implemented, the entire team basically was in a revolt type place where our opinions were never taken into account. And it was just, something new that we had to do with no reason or explanation as to why. Using Olive to go through this evaluation process really showcases that time is saved not only on the front end with requirements gathering and management, but also on the back end with managing the vendors and the back and forth, ensuring that everybody's working from the same information. From each of these steps on the slide, you can see that a lot of this stuff is taking place concurrently. So, while you might be working on the scope of the project, those specific requirements, maybe that IT or finance or whatever is going to be a must-have company-wide, those requirements can start to be gathered. That project manager can start to include, requirements for those stakeholders to start looking at. And while your stakeholders are doing that, you can start to look at some of the vendors that you would like to include. So a lot of this can happen concurrently. With that happening, the agile process really allows you to shorten the amount of time on the tech selection process and really gets you to that faster time to value and product adoption. And that's it for the Olive process.
Brilliant. Well, should we dive into a case study? Because I know people always love to see a practical application. So I know this one's a really good one, Nicole. So I'll pass it back.
Yep, thanks. Okay, so a little bit of Olive in action. Mark Tucker from Kong, it's an API service management company. He came to Olive because he was looking to improve some of the HR solutions that he was looking either to rip and replace or, to implement net new at his company. So by using Olive, it helped Kong improve efficiencies, not only from requirements gathering, but vendor scoring and more. Mark invited key organizational stakeholders into the project to collaborate. So that did include some end users from the HR department, but also some C-suite decision makers as well. So legal was involved, IT, and the finance department. And they were all able to collaborate on requirements specific to this HRIS project. Specific requirements for that, but then also those company specific requirements. It kept all stakeholders informed about what was going on. So, in-app chat and the collaboration around requirements allowed for a lot of that to happen within the platform. Mark says it took him 2 weeks to start gathering requirements or to finish gathering requirements from all of those key stakeholders. And that was down from 2 to 3 months, which was the usual time frame at the company. It helped get that buy-in from the stakeholders. He was able to reduce the amount of meetings because a lot of the collaboration was happening in the chat. And overall, from start to finish with the project, from start through vendor selection and then contract negotiation, it took him roughly 8 to 10 weeks, down from about half a year, which is what the normal time frame, he had been going through this evaluation process in, previous projects. So really the use of the platform, helped him, reduce that amount of time and really choose and start to implement a solution that was going to solve some really big pain within the HR department at Kong.
I love it. And just before, if we can go back to that slide just for one moment, I'm just thinking back to that example, Casey, that you shared, where you had a new piece of software brought in, and the team was up in arms, in revolt, or I don't want to call your team revolting, but they were. But yeah, that middle point there, helping the buy-in from the stakeholders, because to me, I just sort of see the torpedo coming from the submarine, because something like that can sink a project big time.
Yes.
And it just needs one person to complain to their boss in a different function. Maybe the accountant refers back to the CFO, and suddenly the CFO is against this idea, and it'll come back to the HR team. So I'm on the side of the HR folks here, just to protect yourselves, get that buy-in, and it's a wonderful way to do it using that olive process. So yeah, I really like that. So thank you for sharing that case study. So if we move forward now, as I said, we can take some questions, but as we do that, while you're thinking of some questions, I've got some coming through, but we would love it, if you could submit an olive review, if you've had a look around, or if you've used or have had a chance to look around, as I say, if you just use that bit.ly link there, /olive reviews, it'd be wonderful. Really appreciate it from the team at Olive. So moving to questions, if you've got questions, throw them into the chat box there. We have had some coming through already. So, I'll start. I don't know who to throw this to as to what makes a good software evaluation survey. Maybe Brenda, if I can throw it to you just quickly. What makes a good software evaluation survey? You're on mute, Brenda.
Sorry about that.
No
Actually,
problem.
I think that would be a great question for Casey to jump in and talk about Olive's functionality and
Good point.
Yeah.
So, while we mentioned engaging stakeholders, within that process and allowing them to add requirements, rank requirements, what's important to them. One thing that I like to, talk with clients about is the use of surveys, which is part of the discovery process, that you can do in Olive. You can create surveys to go out to end users, not only the stakeholders that are going to be in there, but, with survey creation, how you are phrasing your questions is equally as important as the feedback that you want to get back from it. So, we say that, people should be using Olive to remove the bias from software evaluation. And that is, what I want isn't necessarily what somebody next to me wants. So it really gives it an even, playing field, because everybody can provide their feedback. But within the use of surveys, not writing leading questions, allowing for your respondents, if you're going to give them a pick list, to allow them, if they don't like any of the options you've given them, to be able to provide their own feedback. So having really that two-way communication, and being as neutral as possible in how you ask the question in order to solicit the feedback that's going to be helpful, and more productive in that vendor evaluation. It's a blog post that, we've posted recently, because I've seen some bad surveys out there, that are leading, have maybe leading questions because the project manager, has a affection for one software that may not be the best fit. And then some really good surveys too that do allow for really good feedback.
Excellent. And yeah, Anya has kindly thrown a link to that blog post as you spoke there, Casey, into the chat group there. So if you check out that article there, if you're on the thing. Now, Brenda, you went through a wonderful no regrets model. I have to use that for life. I'm going to use that one. But yeah, so there's an interesting question. Your thoughts. So at the recent HR Tech conference, the keynote, Stacey Harris there was reporting vendor satisfaction dropped dramatically to 7% for learning, analytics, and compensation apps and user experience satisfaction. So no doubt your no regrets collective can change this or work towards it. So what's a realistic number that your collective should achieve?
Yeah, that's an interesting collection. And interesting question. And I'd love to really dive in and understand more about where the vendor satisfaction numbers are coming from that Stacey's reporting on. I know that it's, they're calling that the COVID time frame was sort of a grace period where companies didn't, they just allowed the HR tech vendors, they considered it saying, we'll just give you some grace. But now that that's over, I know that we're definitely seeing a decline in satisfaction. I think it's an industry problem. And so although our collective can, and our consultants and Olive can help you have no regrets, we can't change the fact that there might not be a solution out there that meets your needs or where the vendors are not stacking up. We can't change that per se, but we can help you work with your vendors. We can help you inform your vendors, help you work through trying to improve that. So what's a reasonable number? I don't know. I would hope to say that we would have a 70 or 80% satisfaction rate. But again, I think that's a little bit up to the vendors themselves and the shift that's required as we've gone through such a huge change coming out of COVID.
Got it. So to either one of you, all this talk of vendor selection and deciding on the different variants, but no one ever got fired for buying IBM is the classic phrase. So I think they're referring to the fact that, yeah, Brenda, at the recent conference, 400 different companies on display. You could choose amongst all of them, but why not just go for the big one that everyone knows? So either of you have thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think it's so easy to go with the known vendor, the vendor that has been around for a long time, the vendor that has the proven, but we also see that they can fall behind. Maybe that's part of why the satisfaction has dropped on some of these tools, is that those vendors have fallen behind. There are some really great point solutions out there. There's new vendors coming up every day. You don't want to miss those vendors. You don't want to buy something that's already outdated, that doesn't have those features that really meet your needs. So I think involving Olive, involving an expert to help you really understand what really is out there and going through the process to really understand your requirements, not getting caught up in just going with the vendor that's known or the vendor that you worked with at maybe like, oh, I use Workday at an old company. Let's just go with them. Or I use SuccessFactors in an old company or Oracle, and really getting into what's going to really meet your needs is key.
Yeah,
Casey?
I was going to say, to piggyback off of that, my comment before of, exactly what Brenda was saying, not just looking at the ones who are maybe most well-known in the market, but, going to some of the lesser well-known ones and have them, look at your criteria and answer their criteria. Involving, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10 solutions all at one time, within the platform allows you to see where others, are meeting your requirements, not just what they do really well, but what actually meets your company's requirements, versus ones that, aren't doing so well. And you can see this laid out, in a grid form where it's, I like to call it a compatibility score. And that score is based on your needs, not what they're showing you in a demo, but how they solve, the problems or the requirements that you guys are requiring from whatever solution you choose from. And I've seen some clients who are looking at 10 plus vendors, but it's all happening at the same time, and you're able to share information with everybody, and they're not seeing who other, like what other companies are working within the platform. So it's anonymous, but you can get a pretty good idea of, those, maybe issues or risks of, well, they really stack up with these, they don't do so well in this category. Are we okay with that if we move forward with them? But at least you're cognizant of what to look out for during implementation, or, that warrants a further conversation with the sales rep. So it really brings out that stuff that, ultimately you would find maybe during implementation that is then going to extend, the timeline or the costs or anything like that. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, another question. How would you address solution stacking versus single vendor? So, for example, working back from the desired outcome, not just merely vendor category shortlisting. So, for example, how could your group go about fixing team effectiveness, so the dynamics of an array of team tech vendors, your management of a team that addresses team dilemmas, etc. So, I guess it's more end result. Well, there's a problem existing. How can you attack that problem? Maybe Brendan, your thoughts on that? Because it's more of
I can start with that.
Picture. Yeah.
Yes. So in the HR tech industry, there's very rarely one solution that's going to fix all of an organization's needs. Some organizations, I worked with an organization recently that had over 200 HR tech systems. So you're very rarely going to find that. And what we do when we work with companies is we really start with what are the core business needs? What are the requirements? And then those could come from any category. If you just focus on one category, you're going to miss solutions that could help you. And so, with Olive's help, we send those requirements out to vendors that might only meet like a part of those requirements, but then we're able to say, okay, this vendor meets this grouping of requirements really, really well. And this vendor meets these other requirements together. And then how can we integrate those solutions together? And that could be the best answer for a company. I mean, there may be a system that is already integrated, covers all of those needs, but more than likely not. So hoping that helps. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Casey.
No, it was really reiterating that section of requirements based on, the different needs of, that group. So here are the core issues for this. Here are the core issues for, problem B, etc. And then being able to visually see, yeah, solution A is really good at this, but solution B is good at this. And when they integrate together, it starts, you are solution stacking, but you are solving all of those problems.
Absolutely. And for the most successful HR software rollout I ever saw, they ended the whole project by giving everyone branded cupcakes or little bunnies. But my advice is always do that if you can help it.
Take a picture with a cake and post it on Facebook or LinkedIn. That's always the answer.
Absolutely. Last few questions then. So this is a good one. How can you achieve high user adoption with the agility of a much smaller company that will drive digital transformation? So any advice, I guess, on how to drive higher user adoption?
Yeah, absolutely. I think user adoption starts from the beginning. And to Casey's point earlier, it's about involving the stakeholders up front, getting their requirements, their needs up front, planning for the change management up front. As we talked about in the model, it's in various parts as we were talking about it, it's just planning for that adoption upfront in every step of your process from the very, very, very start will help you with your engagement. I used to work with companies. It's not as much happening now where you get to the end of the project, they're like, oh, change management. I think we've got smarter as consultants to ask those questions up front. But it used to happen where you get to the end of the project, they'd say, oh, now we need change management. And you're about ready to go live with the system. And they think change management is just training. So starting up front, I think, is really key. Planning for it, understanding what the needs are to really help get that adoption.
Do you know what? We've kind of rolled those some questions together there. So I'm gonna leave the questions there, and just because mindful of everyone's time there. So I might, if you have any final questions, or if you think of something afterwards, please just you'll have the details from Olive, so you can send through your questions. But before we go, Brenda, you have a resource, I believe.
Yeah, I put together a checklist of really some steps and things that you need to consider during the whole selection process. And Olive will be sending that out to everyone, and you can download that.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's very good indeed. Very handy indeed. Yeah, any final thoughts, Casey, before we start to wrap up?
Just that, the RFP process doesn't have to be a huge, drawn out, lengthy process. There are ways to speed it up. Case in point with Kong, they were able, to find a solution that fit their needs within, a span of 2.5 months rather than a half year, which really then allows for those employees to, get faster time to value, that pain is solved, and they are moving on. So it doesn't have to be a lengthy, drawn out process. And yeah, definitely to reiterate that stakeholder, involvement in gathering end user opinions and stuff right from the bat, whether or not you take all of their feedback into consideration when selecting that vendor is beside the point, but just the fact that you are soliciting feedback, I think, goes a long way to better product adoption at the end.
Any final words of advice, Brenda?
I would say just don't do it alone, right? So many times we get in a hurry and we just want to make a decision. So take the time up front, plan, bring in experts, bring in tools, and do it right from the start. It may seem like, man, this is so much harder up front, but it won't be, because it'll save you time in the selection process, and it'll save you so much time and pain during the implementation and after go live.
Absolutely. Well, folks, unless there are any final questions, I just would thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to be sending out some details, some information, as I said, some bonus resources. So that is something to look forward to, because there's some really helpful stuff in there. But yeah, to thank Brenda and Casey for their time, for sharing their insights and working through that process and the case studies, etc. And to everyone who's attended, and if you're watching this after the event, thank you for watching the recording of the webinar. But we've really enjoyed it, and we hope you found great value. So Brenda and Casey, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you all, and